Gotcha.
Author of Hidden History, Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776 to 1963, and Survival of the Richest, Donald Jeffries separates the real from the unreal. Fact from fiction. Reverse engineering our manufactured reality. And now, from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., this is I Protest with Donald Jeffries.
And welcome to I Protest. This is Donald Jeffries coming to you from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., as the man says, we do every Friday from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for joining us. We're having another January 6th theme show today. There's so many people out there, and I want to get as many of them on my show as I can because they don't have a lot of platforms, and people really need to understand what's happening. It's maybe the greatest injustice in the history of this country. That's saying something. As you read my books and you know how many injustices I've covered. So we're going to have three guests today. One is going to come on in about 10 minutes or so. So we're starting with Tim Rivers has been here before. He is the author of the American Gulag Chronicles, and he knows a lot of these people. In fact, he was saying he was on a show with Amanda, and he also with Greg recently as well. Greg's going to be coming on in a minute. So Tim, great to have you here. Amanda Reel is the wife of one of the Proud Boys who got one of those awful draconian sentences. So she's left in the wake of that, and so she's trying to speak out as well. So I don't know why I'm not. Okay, there. Now I'm back. So great to have both of you here. I appreciate it. Start with you and tell us your story, who your husband is, and what happened, what he's, why he went to Washington, D.C., what he did when he was there, what he supposedly did when he was there, how long it took them for, I had a woman on last week, the praying grandma, that it took 3 years for them to catch up to this dastardly criminal. Just tell the story of what happened.
All right, so my husband, Zachary Reel, he was the president of the Philadelphia chapter of Proud Boys. He went to rallies a lot over the time in which he joined Proud Boys until January 6th. So he went to January 6th thinking it was just going to be like every other rally. He never got in trouble with law enforcement, never had issues at rallies. Like, he would just go, he would do his thing, and he would come home. And that's what he thought January 6th would be. And it obviously he was there and it turned into something else. And like everybody else, he got caught up in what was going on. And then 3 months later, it was March 17th, 2021, they came and they arrested him and were charging him with conspiracy, like basically saying that he had orchestrated with other Proud Boys what had happened on January 6th. And it's just, since then, it's been a battle. He was convicted on almost all of the charges on May 4th of last year. And he was sentenced at the end of August to 15 years for it. He had a terror enhancement for offense that he wasn't even, he didn't even touch it. They just gave him an enhancement on it. And we're just waiting to get this in front of the Supreme Court. Because right now, we're actually even just trying to get in the appellate court. And we're hoping it doesn't have to go to the Supreme Court, but if it has to, it has to.
I think we lost our host.
That's what I was thinking. I was confused for a moment.
Oh, my goodness. Well, where are we at? 1,363 indicted. That's a big number. That's insane. That was 1 week ago. 1,363. 815 of them have pleaded guilty, and people often wonder, well, they must be guilty. You have no idea the kind of stresses that they're put under.
Some people can't afford it. You can't, going to, having an attorney going to court, trial is expensive.
The system. I'm sorry about that. If you wonder what happened to me, hopefully it won't happen again. So I'm sorry. So I missed what you were saying, but if the audience heard, that's fine.
Yeah, we were talking about there's 1,363 people indicted right now, and out of that, 815 have pleaded guilty. And many people wonder about, well, why did they plead guilty? They must have done something wrong. But we were talking about the type of stressors that are put under it and the threats of, long-term felony convictions and long prison sentences in order to get people to accept these guilty pleas. And it doesn't necessarily mean anybody did anything really wrong. It just means they maybe didn't want to punish their family with 15 years in prison, like what happened to poor Zach.
They come after you to get you to take a plea. This summer after he was arrested, so in that June, I'd had our daughter, as I was pregnant at the time, and probably within the month of me having our daughter, they were visiting him at the prison, threatening him, like, oh, if you don't take a plea, like we're not going to see your wife and daughter till you're convicted. And I'm sure they said other things to him, but that's what I can remember at this moment.
And
and so I'm sorry, I don't know what I missed, but is this set up? So he was he arrested right away? And you probably said this when I was knocked off, or did it take a while?
About 11 months later. We knew it was coming though, because they had our local newspaper, we're in Philadelphia, a local paper did publish a picture of him in the Capitol about 3 weeks prior to his arrest. So we were aware that they were likely going to be coming, especially with 2 other Proud Boys having been arrested, and just watching them come to anyone that was just pictured within the building those first 3 months.
So now you're looking at
and what did they allege to this? So
you're looking at an unnatural conviction rate is what you're looking at when you look at what's happening in DC inside the district, and you look at the stats. Anybody would think, well, you've rounded up the devil's minions, but the reality of it is, I mean, the conviction rate is abnormal because they use these methodologies. They are really, I think they're going to lose so many of these on appeal because of Brady and other types of violations of due process, including holding people for years, like they did Zach. For
all due process. Yeah,
got the trial.
Yeah, and he was originally granted bail by a magistrate judge in Philadelphia, but out of respect for the prosecution, the judge had stayed the order, basically saying, okay, like, we'll allow a DC judge to rule on this, and obviously denied it. There was no reason he should have been held, and he should have been presumed innocent until trial, and instead we were given a judge who, within the first couple of weeks of having him as the judge, we realized that he assumed that they were all guilty. And not only did he deny Zach's bail, he revoked the bail of 2 of Zach's co-defendants. So.
Punitive, purely punitive.
So what? And what was he accused of? Any violence?
No, he wasn't. At trial, they did bring up some video where they're claiming he was pepper spraying the police, but he was never convicted of it. And he did beat a charge, where they did accuse him of assaulting police, but he beat that one.
It's interesting.
He actually beat a charge. But now, so we still got 15 years.
That's
sorry. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, you have this obstruction charge it's teetering right now in SCOTUS. That's why everybody's looking at what's happening in SCOTUS. If they throw out that 1512C, the basis for all these sedition charges for disruption of official proceedings, they all disappear. And then what you have left is nothing but, basically punitive misdemeanors and people who were defending themselves. And yet, even for 4 misdemeanors, the gentleman I interviewed just yesterday, whose show aired today, received 7 months hard time in a medium security prison along with felons, and it really, basically, I think they are hoped for death by inmate. And all of these people who have been put in here,
you guys are. Excuse me, Tim. You guys are breaking up to me. Something is wrong with my connection, and it's not you because the audience didn't get it. I'm going to restart real quick. So go ahead and talk amongst yourselves. I don't know why this I'm having a glitch here, but I'm going to restart and hopefully a bit. So go ahead. I'll be right back. Just talk amongst yourselves.
Talk amongst yourselves. So, Amanda, have you heard from Zach recently?
Yes, he calls me every day. He gets, thankfully the prison started with 10-minute phone calls a day, and now they're up to 15-minute phone calls. So it's nice to hear from him. He makes a point to call every day, usually pretty early in the day, and we'll talk on speakerphone. So my daughter gets to talk to him a little bit too. She's only 2, so she doesn't do much talking, but
No, that's got to be precious for Zach to be able to just to hear her voice.
yeah, because for the first 2 years of his incarceration, he only got to see her at a visit. He never got to hold her. He didn't get to hold her till this past October. So we're hoping to plan a visit. Gets to see her.
I think one thing we're all agree on after having come intimately in contact with the Bureau of Prisons that this country needs prison reform.
It does.
Almost
Definitely.
worse than it needs economic reform. We have become a third world country when it comes to the concept of corrections, which, by the way, nobody gets corrected.
It's not. It's not about reform in the prison. It's not about sending you back out to not commit crimes again. It's just to put you in there, torture you, and they want to keep you in the prison system. That's what it's meant to do.
Yeah, because you'll encounter violence and then you'll defend yourself, just like you did on January 6th, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll come up with new charges and they'll keep you in prison longer. And if you're lucky, you won't get badly injured, or like Greg, you're going to see you'll get your teeth knocked out, or like poor Stacy Hager, you'll get the back of your head split open, or poor Ryan Samsel, you'll lose vision in one eye and have traumatic brain injury. This is all on the Dems. This is all on this administration. This is all on the Bureau of Prisons, whose responsibility is to keep these men and women safe, especially those who have been convicted of misdemeanors. And you put them in with hardcore murderers.
That's what Zach's in prison with. He's in a medium security prison, and he's in there with like actual criminals.
Criminals, no, gang members, multiple murderers. I mean, we're talking the Group W bench, for those of you who remember Alice's Restaurant.
I'm terrified for him every day. I'm waiting for the call where he's like, "Yep, no, I've been hurt by them."
It's interesting to note that if you look at the Department of Justice's statistics across the United States, where their trials are held within federal district courts, but within state jurisdictions, where juries are drawn from actual peer pressure, peer groups where those people live. It's interesting to see that out of all of that, the dismissal cases are pretty high. In DC, 1,363 indicted, 10 dismissals, 10, and only 3 acquittals. I mean, that's an unnatural rate. You have to ask yourself why that is. And when you listen, obviously, to people like Zach and his interviews and folks that I interviewed like today, Stacy Hager, they go like, we didn't do anything. We were invited into the building. We walked around. We talked to police officers. We said a prayer. We were asked to leave, and we left. And for that, you do 7 months.
Videos of them holding the doors.
Well, in Stacy's case, you can actually hear the guard say, come on in. And he says, well, there's lots more behind me. He says, well, bring them all in with you. And then he ushers him through the door. I don't understand
how those officers who are holding the door, how they're inviting them in. How are they not held accountable? If no one was supposed to be there and you're going to charge all of these people that went in there, you need to also charge the people that opened the door for them, that said, hey, yeah, you can come in.
And I think we've all reached that after 3 years, after seeing these videos and hearing these stories and reading these letters and listening to people relate firsthand what happened that day and why they went. I'm finding it hard to believe that in America you could still be convinced that this was an insurrection, that these people were seditious, that there was a conspiracy to overthrow a government. Trennis Evans, who I think often says, if we'd have been cannibals and we were hungry that day, there wouldn't have been a scrap left. The reality of it is there was an overwhelming force that could not have been stopped if the intent was to overthrow the government that day. The government would have been overthrown. I don't think there's any doubt based upon the huge crowd that was there, if that was truly their intent. And yet,
it wasn't their intent. No one showed up that day with that being their intent. They just wanted to go and support the sitting president of the time. They wanted to express how they felt that the election was fraudulent, and that was the day to do it. It was there was
I apologize to everybody. I'm back. Hopefully it'll be better. It'll work better. I don't know what's going on with my connection. Good. So, thanks again, both of you, for patience. And Amanda, my heart goes out to you. I know you have more than one. I know you talked last week about a dance recital. How many children do you have?
Zachary and I just have the one daughter. He does have an older daughter. She's my stepdaughter. I consider her mine. She's a bit older. She's 19. Together, we just have the 2-year-old. So
again, this is, and I think I write about so many of these people too, because I'm putting a book together. And just one of them, I think, had 5 kids or 7, and all small. And just like, the fact that small children are left behind like this. I don't know how long your husband's going to be in jail, but you do hold out some hope that the Supreme Court will look at his case, because Tim was talking a little bit. Isn't the main thing they're looking at the so-called terrorism enhancement that makes this? Are they looking at anything else beyond that?
I'm not too sure. I'm not really sure. I just know that we're waiting on the verdict on the 1512.
Yeah, there's lots of charges in Zach's case. There's more than the 1512, but the 1512 is big. It carries a huge penalty. It's an obstruction of a official proceeding, which is really a misuse of the law. The law was intended to stop you from destroying documents when you were served with a warrant to preserve something for an investigation. It was never meant for this. It's been misused, and I think the Supreme Court will reject it. When you listen to the type of questions that they asked and the comments that they were getting back during the initial voir, you're going to hear a distinct attitude against that type of use of that law. It doesn't fit. It's not appropriate. The penalties are overreaching. And then you add the recent reversal using sentencing enhancements for Lieutenant Colonel Brock, which can now be applied to everybody who had sentencing enhancements put on their. I mean, there's a lot coming apart for the DOJ. If I was really at the top of this stack and I had hair, I'd be pulling it out right now, because a lot of things are coming apart for them. And how are you going to salvage this? How are you going to deal with people who, including Zach, who have served their time? And you listen to Greg when he comes on later today, he's almost done with his sentence and he's got a 1512. How are you going to undo that for people who have now been penalized for something that is ruled unconstitutional?
Well, and that's why we're certainly hopeful, because it seems about the only chance is the Supreme Court. But if they, let's say the best case scenario for justice would be, obviously, if they did as much as they could to show how unjust these sentences are. If it ends up with a bunch of J6ers being released early or immediately, what do you think the response is going to be on the part of the establishment? Because they're going to go nuts, because they want. I get the impression they want these people hanged in the public square. They don't think any sentence is severe enough. I mean, do you think we'll see riots over that if that happens?
I don't know, because I got news for you. There's people on the other side of this conversation that would also like to see people hung from the public square. It's not the same people.
Not the same people. That's for sure.
You're really looking at I hate to say it, because I never want to see this in my lifetime. I have great grandparents who participated in the conflicts between the North and the South, or great grandparents. Sure. And I don't want to see that happen in America, because it won't be North and South. It'll be blue and red. It'll be cities versus rural. It'll be something that nobody in this country has ever seen before or wants to see. And in the midst of that, we will be the weakest nation on the planet. And so I hope we never come to that. But I tell you that the differences in belief have been fed by the psyop of mainstream media for almost 2 decades. Absolutely. And you are seeing the result of that psyop in people who still firmly believe, even after seeing with their own eyes, the rhetoric that has been repeated to them over and over and over every day without ceasing.
And you alluded to Stacey Hager, who was on my show last week, And he's, I mean, there are plenty of other examples of this, but I was struck by when he was talking about, he had recorded, I guess, on his phone, he recorded everything. And he recorded all the police officers that were opening the doors from the inside that day and saying, come on in. To me, I don't know how much better evidence you need. At the very least, an honest justice system would want to know who those police officers were. Wouldn't they be accessories after the fact if they let them in? You're part of the insurrection, aren't you? But they have no interest in that. And he having that kind of evidence, and there's other examples of it as well, it just doesn't matter, as you pointed out, and Amanda pointed out too as well. There's a big difference between Philadelphia and here in Washington, D.C. It's virtually impossible for any of these people to get anywhere near a fair trial. Evidence just doesn't matter when you're dealing with a jury pool that is probably 95% antagonistic to Trump, and you're there in his name. How can they possibly get a fair trial?
They can't get a fair trial. I remember during the jury selection for Zach's trial, every day he came back from court and he was like, it's so bad. They had them fill out a questionnaire and just to try to wean out like some of them, and it still didn't do it. Like, they had strong opinions on Trump. They had strong opinions on the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers.
Right.
And not one of those people could overcome that bias to sit through a trial. Like, if you sat in that trial and you looked at these jurors, one of them slept. Apparently another one felt like she was a prisoner being there. They decided they were guilty long before they even watched the trial.
Sure.
And you have to understand, you only get 10 rejections in voir dire. Only 10. So by the time you say you got 80 people and they all hate you, and you get rid of 10, you still got 70 people who hate you.
Yes.
And you don't get to reject them. You know, this is the trauma. They're doing the same thing to President Trump right now in the voir dire in New York. It's no different.
Yeah, you're right. The jury process is the same. They can't. Again, there's 95% or more that are going to be anti-Trump, and again, evidence is not. It's not even important in those cases, and we're seeing it here. And I apologize if I missed this, Amanda. Explain with my connection problems. Your husband Zach was he in the gulag or whatever? Was he there for a while? Did he experience the beatings and the solitary confinement and all this?
Wasn't there for that. So I call this fortunate. It's not that fortunate, but he was in Philadelphia in FDC for most of his being held pre-trial. So he never left our home city. When he did leave, he went to Northern Neck and then he went to Alexandria. He didn't go to the DC gulag until after his trial had ended and he was awaiting sentencing. So he wasn't there for what was the worst of what was happening to the men in the gulag.
Yeah, but Northern Neck was no picnic. Let me tell you again.
Oh, he said it was horrible. He was robbed within a week of being there, and I think he only spent 2 weeks there.
Yeah, it's a bad. Even Alexandria. These are very horrible places. Again, if you missed it, this is a call for prison reform in this country like never seen before. If one of your loved ones falls into this system, you are
solitary confinement.
Absolutely, and no medical.
No, absolutely. It's amazing. And the thing that people, and I comment this from I'm a civil libertarian. I started out on the left. I was so far left, but now I find myself with the far right most of the time. But this is amazing to me that the ACLU and no civil libertarian cares about what's happening. These people have been denied all due process even before you get to try the fact that they're held in prison. And recently was Steve Baker, the journalist that was put in leg irons, and a couple other people were put in leg irons for misdemeanors, unheard of stuff that's happening. You had last week, I had Rebecca Leventz, the praying grandmother, 71 years old, wonderful woman, very faithful, obviously no danger to anybody, was in there for 10 minutes praying the entire time, probably faces years in prison, probably automatic conviction because these people are always convicted. This is just a travesty. Are you shocked, Tim, that no one that I guess maybe Glenn Greenwald, maybe to some degree, but nobody on the left has spoken out about this at all, just from a civil libertarian's perspective?
I've been a protester all my life. I started back in the Vietnam War, and have always
Yeah.
kind of been active. I mean, I've never been a violent protester, but I've always been an activist. And I think that's important. I think Americans should be activists. I think you should have strong feelings about your life and your government, and you should not be afraid to seek them. But that's what this has been about. This is about silencing protest. It's about not protesting. It's about making you shut up and fear protesting. About a silence. And
yeah. Well, look. I mean, look what happened. That's what I say. If it, from
Hey
the
guys,
right,
what's going
especially,
on?
look what happened this time. I mean, again, Greg Rubenacker, thanks for coming on. Is it Grubenacker or Rubenacker? Rubenacker?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Your name right. Greg is it's so why don't you tell your story? Just what you were doing January 6th, how you came to be there, how long it took for them to find you and track you down, and so forth, and what your punishment has been or will be.
We lost him. Ouch.
Oh. Well, I don't think that was good. He's coming back.
Action right there, Don. They got your number.
Yeah. Well, they shadow banned everywhere, so they played games with this show. Trust me. I can tell you about the book "Masking the Truth About COVID," the most shadow banned book. Stories about what they've done with that. Greg Rubenacker, thanks for coming back. We lost you for a second, but did you hear my question about just explain where you were on January 6th, what you were doing, what they claimed you were doing, how long it took for them to track you down, and what kind of punishment you've been subjected to or will be subjected to? Can you hear me, Greg? Greg?
I think we have lots of signal. I can answer some of those while we're waiting to see if he can regain.
Okay.
Greg got 44 months. 44 months.
Okay.
With a follow-on, actually, if they allowed it, luckily they allowed him to serve them consecutively. But if they'd have made them, concurrently, but if they'd have made them consecutively with the misdemeanors, he'd have been in jail for over 100 months. Again, for just a peaceful protest. He was in the building. He went through a broken window. He didn't have any encounters or violence with any police officers. Like everybody else, he received a kangaroo court with no evidence, and push you in here, threaten you with the big axe, and he came out with guilty verdicts, and they sentenced him to 44 months in prison. And again, this is not a light facility, okay? This is a medium facility where this is where you put murderers, rapists, gang members, killers, people who are a threat to society.
Well, Greg is back. Tim was giving us a little background, Greg, on what your draconian sentence was. So tell us again how you came to be there on January 6th, and what were you doing that day?
I was simply protesting. I don't know if you guys hear the echoes. I'm sorry about that.
No, we
really
can hear
quiet
you.
spot.
We can hear you now. That's good.
And I guess the internet lagged out.
No, it's fine. We can hear you now. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just trying to move around so that doesn't happen again.
Okay. So on January 6th, what were you doing?
I was simply protesting. After Trump's speech, by the time I even walked down to the Capitol, according to my documents, I was already trespassing, and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know there was barricades or anything. And I walked up to where the scaffolding was. I was kind of on the left side of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we started singing the national anthem. And right after that, there was a bunch of flashbang grenades, smoke grenades, and it kind of just got all out of hand after that.
Now you ended up inside the Capitol. How long were you in the Capitol for?
Yeah, they say I was like the fourth person that entered the Capitol. I feel like the video gets completely taken out of context because, you know, when you're in the moment, you don't really you're not hearing what's going around you.
Right.
But I guess people were saying, "Where's Mike Pence?" and all that stuff, and it's just like, I went to the Capitol with a water bottle.
Did they claim it was a weapon?
They tried saying that I had chemicals in the water bottle, and my lawyer had to prove to them that it wasn't chemicals. And through Capitol surveillance, you see me drinking out of this water bottle. So it couldn't have been chemicals after that. And then, yeah, so I was in the Capitol, and then I had left because I felt like the people when I first went in were getting very aggressive. And I was really just there to have my voice heard. So I had left. And I went in on the other side, which brought me to the rotunda. And I mean, there's a bunch of photos that I wish I could share with you, but I haven't shared them. And I won't share them until everything with my case is completely done.
Sure.
But, you know, I have photos of me next to Abraham Lincoln and just really doing touristy things, to be honest, taking photos. And then after that, you know, I sat down inside the Capitol, and that's where, you know, they have me lighting up and stuff. And then right after that, I was just, you know, witnessing everything that was happening in the rotunda, and Capitol Police started just beating up people. And that's when it got out of hand, and then I kind of let my impulses get the best of me. I kind of should have just walked out after that. And I ended up getting bear maced. And then I had tossed water at an officer, a couple of droplets. And that's where my assault on the officer comes from.
You assaulted him with water? That's an assault? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that was my assault charge. I didn't actually physically touch a cop, push a cop. I didn't do anything.
Well, tell us. You mentioned bear mace. I keep hearing all these reports of bear mace. Why was there bear mace there? Who is? I mean, I don't. Is that common of a thing? I mean, or are they exaggerating? Why would there be so much bear mace there? Because I hear lots of them claiming that, you know, the J6er had bear mace.
That was MPD. That's a Metro Police who showed up on scene and then just opened up on the crowd with extreme. This is called OCD spray. It's a military grade pepper spray.
Yeah.
They also fired capsicum balls. They sent munitions into the crowd, exploding munitions.
Yes.
They sprayed people. I mean, they just kind of lost it, as you can see from the film. But the bear spray wasn't brought by crowd members. It was brought by MPD and CPD.
That's what I figured, because it's I mean, why would you come to why would you think, well, what am I going to bring? I'm not going to bring a gun. Nobody brought a gun for an insurrection, which is a strange thing to do. But you bring bear spray? I mean, were they expecting bear? I mean, I don't. So I get confused when I keep hearing that. But Greg, you excuse me, Tim told us that you were sentenced to 44 months. So what happened there? Were you held in prison? In the gulag?
No, they had ended up giving me bail. I was arrested a month after January 6th.
Okay.
And they only had me on, I believe, parading in the Capitol at the time. Nonetheless, they raided my house with assault weapons and everything, which is crazy because that's all they at the time they had on me was that. And then in November of 21, they superseded me with the 1512C, and I believe the assault.
So you never got to, you didn't, unfortunately, you didn't experience what so many others have, or solitary confinement and beatings and all that stuff.
I did 5 months in the hole at Allenwood.
Okay, now this is Allenwood, Pennsylvania?
Yep.
Yeah.
So what was it like there? Was it any better than what we've heard, or was it bad there too?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the whole prison experience wasn't good at all. So
Right.
there's really nothing good about it.
Well, Tim brought up a great point, and I write a lot about I mean, our prison system is a joke, but I think one good thing that may come out of this is that the right wing conservatives will finally get over their love affair with law and order and this stuff, because I mean, once they experience the prison life, they realize how bad it is and how many people may be in there that are innocent, or certainly at least were convicted unfairly. Uh, Tim, do you see? I mean, I see a change on that for the most part. Though too many people on the right still, I just sit there and shake my head when they keep worshiping police. And I'm thinking, what do you need to see? You saw during the Black Lives Matters protests how they were standing down, and they're kneeling down in many cases with them, not going after those many times violent people. January 6th, did you get the sense, Greg, that anybody there, any of the cops there were on your side? Because people say, oh, the cops are going to be on our side. What cops are they talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I actually said that. I had thought they would be with us.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, I'm from New York. That's where I am right now. After seeing how the police, they forced, the social distancing, the lockdowns, the mask, and then January 6th. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like at the end of the day, I think they would just, whatever their orders are.
Yes.
They're going to take their orders, and I don't know. It's kind of scary at the same time, because on January 6th, I had multiple police officers write to me because they were friends of mine, and they had, said thank you for going down there and making our voice heard, because they were working, so they couldn't go down there. And so they had thought that me going down there was for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer talk to any of them. They won't talk to me anymore. So
yeah,
I'm not sure what's really going on when it comes to law enforcement at all.
Yeah, well, it's obviously a rude awakening. And Amanda, your husband, I don't know what the Proud Boys position was on law enforcement or anything before, but has this
very black back the blue?
Yeah.
Okay, they were back to blue. So I assume his position must have changed on that now, since he's seen, or is he still supporting them?
No, he still supports the police, and his father was a Philadelphia police officer. His grandfather was a Philadelphia police officer. Like, I have cops in my family, and he's always respected them. When he used to attempt to throw rallies in Philadelphia, he had some small ones, and he had always worked with the police. His opinion has never changed. I mean, he's disappointed at the way the police have especially changed a bit since all of this, but he doesn't want to defund them, and he still knows there's cops out there. We just we went through a tough time.
But his experience on January 6th, was he fighting with them? Were they fighting?
He wasn't fighting with them. I mean, he definitely thinks that the Capitol Police didn't act appropriately. He understands they were doing their job, but they let him in the building, and then they tried to charge him with assault.
Let him in the building, right? Greg, did they let you? Said you were the fourth one in the building. How did you get in? Did you break in, or did somebody wave you in, or did you see a cop open the door from the inside like Stacey Hager told us?
Something's happening over here. Just give me a second.
Okay, sure. Sure. Go ahead, Tim. You look like you were going to say something earlier.
Yeah. One of the things I hope you ask Greg and Amanda is about the cost of this personally. Greg is going to be basically homeless, without a job, and with a record when he comes out. Amanda is trying to take care of a daughter, and without the breadwinner in the household. I don't think people understand the collateral damage that this has done to families, to individuals, to lives in general, not just now while they're in prison, but forever. These are attempts to put people into a mode of what I call civic death, where you've lost your constitutional protections.
So just recently, we lost our car insurance because of this. Like, I received
really
now, and they were like, "Oh, you don't get to have car insurance with us anymore because of this." And if you
actually said that, they actually said it was because of this.
What he was convicted of.
At least they're being honest.
Banks will defund you. Banks have defunded people. All the many of the cash apps and things like that have defunded individuals. I've lost customers. I mean, this is really like I said, this is a cultural battle that has drawn lines right through the middle of America. And if we don't solve it, we're in for a real hurting.
Well, if somebody like Amanda, even if you assume everything is true about her husband and everybody else, that these are awful people, she didn't do anything. Why should her car insurance be canceled, and why should your children be punished?
I know. I mean, I've since found new car insurance, but just
good.
We've been on this for years.
Tell us who canceled you, so we know who not to do business with.
USA. We've already had bank accounts closed. USAA.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's going to be USAA.
Oh yeah, they're the worst. They're the worst. Yeah.
When they closed,
and Bank of America, they said they're going to call them right out.
And then they just said, "We're not renewing your insurance," and it was like, really.
So what do you do about this? This is cultural. I mean, now you've gone beyond censorship. Now you got, cultural atavism here, where you're going after people. Where will this stop? How much damage could you possibly do to a culture inside of 3 years? I wouldn't have believed this. Hey, Greg's back. Hopefully the fire truck's left and nothing.
Yeah, Greg again said, but Amanda's described losing her car insurance because of this. I mean, you are. I guess you're now in some kind of a halfway house. You describe it. It's kind of, I guess it's like a low grade thing. But you had told me before you might be homeless afterwards. I mean, what is your? I didn't ask you. What's your family situation? Has your family turned on you? They've been supportive, or what's going on?
No, that's actually why I'm going to be homeless. I guess I'm finding out that somebody had contacted probation without my mother's consent, and was basically saying that I'm, very political, hasn't learned his lessons, and it's just like, it mind boggles me because, my mom's older, she has health concerns, and for the longest time, me and my mom would have conversations and talk every night just about life, because she was going through so much. And I would talk to her, and I would talk to her, she would talk to me, and we were doing that for such a long time. So I thought that me being back would be actually a very healthy thing for her, so that she would be able to vent her problems and her frustration to me. My dad had passed away last year, so she lost her arm and rock.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have
any siblings or anything?
No, I have a large family, and I guess that's why some of the people say what they're saying. It really hasn't been my mom saying this to me. It's been my brothers and sisters. And I know that they are more in line with the Democrats. And I have bias towards if you vote for a Democrat or if you vote for a Republican. But I think that it's just crazy because I did the time already, and now I just feel like my family is using this against me now too as well. So I have nowhere to go.
So when you get out, see my mom. So when you get out, you're not going to have anywhere to go. You're probably going to have a hard time getting anybody to hire you. With that on your wrist, worse than I guess being anybody who's been has a criminal record knows how hard it is to get hired as an ex-felon. In your case, you've got this real black market. Oh, God, a J6 or so. But this highlights the problem that I talk about all the time: American family dysfunction. That so your own family basically they would you have brothers and sisters, but none of them would take you in, even if they know you're going to go homeless.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm
And
so
I've
sorry.
I've been trying to just battle with that because I've just been having so much anxiety thinking about it, and I just
Sure.
I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe I'm going to go to Amanda. Can you mute your mic because there's a lot of background noise when I talk to Amanda?
Yeah.
Amanda, what has been the situation with your extended family? Obviously, you have the daughter and the stepdaughter. You have parents, you have siblings, or his family. Did they turn on him? Do they think he's a horrible person because he's a proud boy, or what's the situation there?
No, so his family, his mom, his stepdad, his brother are all supportive. They are continuously in contact with him. He does have extended family that are not supportive, but they haven't been in the picture for the entirety of our relationship. So their opinion and their like not having them support him doesn't really matter. My side of the family, my parents are supportive. My sister and her husband are supportive. I've got extended family that are all over the place. It really just their opinions are varying. Some of them are supportive, some of them don't agree with some of what happened, but they respect that I'm supporting him. And then I have other family members who are not talking to anymore, and it is what it is.
Well, it sounds like you've come out of this you've been a little more fortunate in this regard than Greg has, who I think Tim. I don't know. You probably know more about this. I would think that probably more families have reacted like Greg's than Amanda's. Am I wrong there that they haven't supported these people?
You're not wrong. Many families have been split apart. Husbands have lost wives, family, children. I mean, in some cases, children have even testified against their parents in court. It's been a very, very hard time. But I want to point out that, there's organizations out here that are trying to deal with what's happening with Greg and what might happen with Zach when he comes out. American Patriot Relief is one of the organizations. Stand in the Gap Foundation is another one they're trying to prepare the ground for people that are coming out in the condition that Greg is. We'll try and find them housing and supportive environments and find them jobs. We're not forgetting what's happening here. There's a huge community out here. I wouldn't say it's a great safety net, but it is a net. We might have to catch them with our hands, but nobody's going to fall through if we can help it. And I think everybody can help support those efforts by going to those websites or even going to our website, j6patriotnews.com. Choose one of these organizations, get involved, and help save these good American patriots who haven't done anything wrong that you and I shouldn't probably have done ourselves. And yet they're paying a huge price in liberty for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. And that's why I keep stressing it. And I get the sense too that because most of the people and my audience is basically there are not very many that still support Trump. Let's put it this way. But I'm getting the sense that most of the people, I've had Ashley Babbitt's mom on a couple times. She still supports Trump. In fact, I don't think I've met any that don't. So what Greg and Greg, you first, and then Amanda, how do you still feel about Trump? Do you think he betrayed you at all? Or do you think he stood by you? Or are you planning to vote for him again? Or what's your feelings on Trump?
Well, I lost my voting rights. Now that I'm a felon.
Oh, you're a felon.
I can't vote anymore. But no, I still support him, but at the same time, I feel like he turned his back on us. I feel like he should be talking about it a lot more.
That's what I think.
I think that he should be trying to at least raise money for people that paid the sacrifice. And the fact that he hasn't done that while people like me are suffering, I don't know. It
I agree with you. He's raised
and the guy keeps raising millions of dollars. I just think that because they say that the reason why he can't do that is if he does do that, then they'll have a reason for him to not run. So then I don't understand why it can't just be Eric Trump or Jr. doing something like this.
Yeah.
But
they should have set
I don't
something up.
know.
What kind of legal did you have a public defender like so many of the J6ers had?
No, I had a paid lawyer, and that's where majority of my savings went.
Although, to be honest, I don't know that Perry Mason could help you all. And when you're being tried in Washington, D.C., I don't think it matters. Yeah.
No, there was kind of no difference from what I've seen. But,
how about go ahead. I'm sorry, Greg. Finish up.
I have a public defender now for my appeals, but my judge had already said without the 1512C, because I have the assault, that she was still going to give me the 41 months. Yeah. So it doesn't change anything.
And how do you like that? I mean, what do you say about that when a judge says, I'm going to defy the Supreme Court's decision, nullify this unconstitutional act and this unconstitutional sentencing, and you have Article 3 judges going like, oh, well, we'll just increase sentences on other things. Excuse me, but where do you see that falling within the moral turpitude laws for somebody who qualifies as an Article 3 judge in the highest offices of the land is going to defy the Supreme Court, the ultimate authority of justice?
Yeah, they've just completely lost all sense of reality in terms of what a judge's responsibility is, because when I'm researching this, I've found 2 or 3 instances that I know at least where they lectured the defendant, just a lecture about their beliefs. They shouldn't have believed this. They should have gotten other opinions. And in one case, the guy I forget his name. Tim probably knows, but he was lucky. He wasn't even going to get jail time, but somebody found out he was watching Mike Lindell's special on the vote fraud. And they brought him back in and gave him 2 years or something. I mean, what kind of country have we built here where he watched the wrong special or something? He wasn't watching child pornography. He was watching a special that everybody could. I mean, this is hideous. Did you know about that case, Tim?
We didn't build this. I'm going to correct you right now. We did not build this. This was stolen from us.
Yes.
And replaced with this faux government, this de facto dictatorship in this country. That you can just ignore the law, you can ignore the jurisprudence rules, you can ignore Brady Act, you can ignore Jenkins, you can just deny everybody due process, hold them in prison for years and years. This is madness, and I can't understand why the American people are not out there, but I do understand that January 6th was meant to keep them from going out there. And it seems to be working. It really does seem to be working. That fear factor, people don't understand how close to the brink they are and how vital that fear is. Folks, I'm just going to tell you, you're not avoiding it. You're just delaying it.
Yep.
You're next. You're next.
That's what I keep trying to tell them. It doesn't matter what you think of Trump. It doesn't matter what you think of Alex Jones or any of these J6ers. You can say, I mean, I get so many people, they should have known better. They were set up and whatever. It doesn't matter. Any of that, all that's irrelevant to what has happened to them. The way they've been treated. It doesn't matter. Even if you assume they should have known and they were gullible or whatever, the reaction is what's important. And the fact they're still tracking people down. Amanda, how has Zach's opinion of Trump changed? What does he feel about Trump as he sits in prison?
I mean, he still supports him. Trump has spoke of pardoning them, and he has brought up the Proud Boys. One of the sentences that Trump said he would pardon was Zach's. So he has hope that if he becomes president again, that he will uphold that promise. So,
well, if he doesn't do that, because, there are lots of people, I don't know the people on both sides say he could have or couldn't have, but lots of people criticize him and said he could have pardoned them in advance.
I personally believe that Trump and his administration bowed their heads and didn't do anything prior to stepping out of office. I wish they had perhaps made some sort of effort to prevent the mass arrest of thousands of Americans.
Yes.
But could they have actually imagined this is what would have happened? I mean, I can't think that Trump thought that this would happen.
Well, it's certainly hard to picture. I mean, nobody could have envisioned what we're seeing now. But as Tim said, with Americans and everybody just the more it happens, the more it's going to be allowed to happen. I mean, we have things essentially, it's irrelevant. I mean, I'm a Trump agnostic. We're the smallest minority group in the world. But when you watch what he's happening with these prosecutions, where he keeps getting prosecuted for things that have never been crimes before. I mean, how many rich people?
Can I chip in real quick?
Yeah, sure, Greg.
I think one of the problems as well is that the Republican Party it seems like it could just never be unified within itself.
No.
And you had the Democrats protesting, but the whole party was behind it.
Yep.
And now when it comes to J6, you have half the party split.
Right.
And I think that makes a big difference as well.
Right, and that you're exactly. If the Republicans were an opposition party, which they're obviously not, I mean, just look at the vote on Ukraine and look at this guy Mike Johnson, MAGA Mike. I mean, this guy at least he's as bad as Nancy Pelosi. He's horrible, but this is the uniparty that we talk about, and Trump represents the only symbolic opposition to it. And but when you look at what happened with the vote, there was obviously widespread skepticism, to put it kindly, about the election. Lots of mail ballots arriving in the middle of the night, dead people voting, people with no ID, illegals voting, and all kinds of stuff. Obviously, we know that. So there's great reason. And I was on Jeff Rentz's show that night, and we were talking about how Trump is really cruising to victory here. He's ahead in all the swing states comfortably, and then they just stopped counting the vote. And then, a few hours later, suddenly Biden is ahead in all those states. And he's getting, in one case, I think there was a ballot, 6,000 some ballots or something, where Biden won an impossible 99% of them or something. I mean, these are mathematical possibilities. So, but the problem is the Republicans as a group did nothing. Trump was the only one protesting. I mean, no, instantly you had his golfing buddy, Lindsey Graham, and Mitch McConnell, all these people instantly saying, no, we got to, they should have, and the Democrats probably would have been more united. And if they had done it, then they couldn't have demonized Trump. They couldn't have demonized supporters if the entire party was doing that. But that's why I don't know what the answer is, but certainly the Republicans as they exist now are not the answer. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on that.
There's a J6 pardon project underway to help kind of smooth the ground for whoever number 47 is as options, because it's not as easy as you might think. You just wave the magic wand and pardon 1,363 people. And there are varying degrees and different types of pardons. There's pardons of innocence. There's pardons of wrong. There's pardons of mercy. And so each of these things has to be considered. There are people out here working very hard at the Pardon J6 project. I go out there, J6 Pardon Project. Look it up, learn what's going on, understand the difficulty of this. We are not unaware of what's going to happen to folks like Greg and everyone. If we do not pay attention and come to their rescue, we will create an entire new class of persecuted Americans that now have lost their civil liberties and have lost the support of their country. I got veterans who have been turned away. They can't go on military bases for their meds. They've lost their military benefits. I've got people had their Social Security taken away, for God's sakes. That is not something, a gift. You pay
that's really incredible. These are J6ers that had their Social Security?
Yeah, absolutely.
That happened to Zach. They took away his VA, his Social Security, and now the VA is coming after me for back pay that they claim they overpaid him from January 6th.
Wow.
Just incredible.
He's in prison. How are you intending to get that? They denied me for hardship for getting the payments, like not having to pay them back, because I don't have a way to pay the VA back, and I shouldn't have to because I didn't do anything.
Your husband's on Social Security already? I didn't think your husband was that old.
The VA. They took away his Social Security about 2 years ago. But
what was he getting? This was he getting SSDI or something? Disability?
Yes, SSDI.
Okay.
Yeah, they took it away because the prison refused to send medical records to Social Security just to prove that he was still receiving treatment. And they were like, oh, well, we can't prove that you're seeing a doctor, so we can't give you this. And we're going to just say you're not disabled anymore.
Don, there's
But it was the prison
181
wouldn't send
veterans.
it.
181 veterans, Don. 181 veterans indicted. That's almost 18% of the total number of January 6ers. And each of them has been treated this way. Captain Gabe Garcia got sick, tried to get onto the base at Fort Hood to get medical care. No, they surrounded him with a security detail. He's a domestic terrorist. No, he's a retired, decorated Army officer. That's what he is. And I've never seen anything like this in this country. People like Zach, people like Greg, they've been singled out for their beliefs, which is something we should never tolerate here. They're being punished for something that each of us deserves to have. And
Absolutely.
frankly, they're paying the price for us to continue having what we have. If you're sitting here listening to me right now and you haven't spoken up and you haven't looked into any of these, you're complicit. Your silence makes you complicit.
But
I've to your fellow Americans.
Tim, I've found that, and again, I come a long time ago. I came from the left. I'm a classical liberal, but obviously everything's drifted that way. So I'm a populist. But my sympathies are obviously with the people that thought there was election fraud. But even if I didn't agree with this, if this was Black Lives Matter, members of NAMBLA, but it doesn't matter who they are that were being treated this way, it's wrong because everybody has to have due process. You can't just make the law. It can't be politically driven, but this has clearly been politically driven. And what I found is that most people, especially my friends, I'm a JFK assassination guy. That's where I got my start, working as a teenager with Mark Lane way back in the 70s. And, that's where I became a civil libertarian. But there are no people like that on the left anymore. The people from the JFK research community, they want all you guys hung. I mean, they want you hanged. They want you executed. I mean, they have no sympathy. Because they hate Trump so much. They hate the whole MAGA idea. So again, I kept saying, it doesn't matter what you think of anybody. No. You can't have identity, that kind of emotion in the law, but that's what we have now. The law is completely ruled by identity politics. So you have these judges that are openly hostile to the defendants, that make comments that let you know, the judge in Alex Jones' case called him a liar over and over again. We never heard of that in the past. They were judged. I mean, they would at least try to pretend they were, but I'm sure I don't know what the judge was like in your husband's trial, Amanda. But
he was extremely biased. He filed a denial for bail based, essentially saying that he believes Zach was guilty, and he showed his preference through all of pretrial. He showed it during the trial. He was basically lead prosecutor Judge Kelly.
That's the one Trump appointed, right?
Yes,
that's Trump appointed.
I remember when we seen who his judge was. Seeing the comments from the left online, they were pissed that the Proud Boys got a Trump appointee, and I think there was a little bit of relief too on my part because I was like, okay, he's going to be fair. And then, as a couple hearings in, I was like, this is bad. That this judge he's not going to be fair at all, and he wasn't, and he wasn't fair, even especially when it came to sentencing.
I think it's important to note that the judges live in the D.C. district. If everybody in the D.C. district considers themselves a victim, how can you sit in judgment of anybody if you're one of those victims? How can you be on the jury if you consider yourself injured? This is ridiculous behavior. All of these men and women should be allowed to have change of venue back to their states, back to their constituencies, where there really are peers of their nature. This is, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it again. If you're sitting here silent and watching this happen and don't do anything because you don't think they've come for you yet, boy, you're just delaying it. Because the more that it happens to other people, the closer they're going to come to you. Why aren't you on your telephone, 202-224-3121, ask for your congressman and ask them why they're letting this happen? Why are they sitting silently in their chairs in the chamber? Why aren't they on the top of their lungs with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Mr. Bauer? Why aren't you saying anything? What were you sent there for? To protect us, and you're not doing it.
And again, if the Republicans were an opposition party, you would have them as a unified force talking about all this. And this is an outrage. We have political prisoners in this country. I don't know how many people are left that still haven't gone to trial 3 years later, but there are some.
Oh, yes, there are quite a few.
Yeah, and again, this is denied all due process. This is harkens back to and that's what that's what the government would do, and that's why I write a lot about history. We allowed this to happen during the Civil War when Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus and kept thousands of people just like this with no charge. That's what the government would do if you had the ACLU and people actually were. They would cite that as a precedent, and
But
that's
they
why
did not. They did not suspend habeas corpus, and yet they refused to hear habeas cases.
Yeah, they might as well have, though. You're right. So it's for all intents and purposes, they did, because they're sitting there. No, there's no legal. Again, where's the ACLU doesn't exist anymore. I was a card carrying member when I was a teenager. They don't exist anymore. They even admit they're not concerned about civil liberties anymore. They should be front and center with this. This is outrageous. That they, not to mention the treatment that the allegations of beatings and solitary confinement and all this stuff, which is ridiculous. Most of these people are in there for misdemeanors, which aren't even really misdemeanors. But this is the
How
worst.
How are you going to pay these people back, Don? How are you going to give Greg his life back? How are you going to give Amanda and Zach's daughter the time back with her father? How are you going to repair these people's lives when we prove to you that these are all lies and the whole damn thing was a setup?
Absolutely.
When we prove that, how are you going to do that? How will you give these people their
talk
lives?
about reparations? Yeah, I don't. Again, I don't know that you can.
You can't give them their lives back. This is irreparable damage, and anybody who sits here and watches it, it's like being in a traffic accident and not lending aid. That's what it's like.
Absolutely, Greg. I mean, what was your life like before January 6th? What did you do? Did you have a career? And obviously, I'm guessing there's no way you can go back to that.
No, I was doing music. I was actually doing pretty well for myself. I was working with Grammy-nominated producers.
Okay.
I started releasing tracks and stuff. But now that I have nowhere to go, I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to do that, because I'm not allowed to have a laptop at the halfway house, and I have nowhere to go. So I'm kind of just at a full dead stop. If
you could identify as an illegal immigrant, I guess you could get in a 5-star hotel. But I guess that it's shameful to see this happening, and no one cares. And I wish I could give you some hope, but it's unfortunately millions of people. Like what we're, and I can have all the people I've had on. I've had several of people like you on that are going through this, and you could show like a montage of all that too, and millions of Americans would be unmoved. They just don't care. They think you're evil because you supported Trump, and that's it. They don't care about anything. They don't care about the facts at all. It doesn't matter. You could have been beaten to a pulp by cops, like some of these people, Roseanne Boylan, people like that they don't even acknowledge was murdered by a police officer, let alone not just Ashley Babbitt. But it's really shameful. What was your life like before January 6th, Amanda?
It was. Zach and I were. We were actually. He had just opened. It was in the process of opening his own financial firm. We just put our house on the market. We were gonna sell, move. I was pregnant. We were anticipating having a bigger house with a yard, a pool, place to raise a couple of kids, and now we're in the same house, a small 2-bedroom row home in Philadelphia, and he's in prison, and I'm just there.
How are you making the mortgage payment? Are you able to work? Is someone hiring you?
I have been applying like relentlessly to work from home jobs because I can't afford childcare. Thankfully, I've had savings, but I'm trying to find work, struggling.
It's hard.
It's hard because you apply for a job and then you have to hide that you have a child that's home with you, which is the biggest issue. A lot of these companies anticipate that even though you're working from home, you're not going to have your kid with you, which I understand. It's tough.
My heart goes out to you, and obviously you have to try to hide any connection you have to January 6th.
Yeah, it's hard because I did go on the stand. So if you Google my name, everything about my husband comes up, and even my maiden name. Like I can't even apply for jobs with that because I was doxxed prior to getting married. Well, no, early in our marriage, I was doxxed with my maiden name.
Who doxed you?
Antifa, the Philly Antifa, and my husband were always going back and forth, and they wanted to connect my name with some police officers, so they used it, and any Googling of any of my names just come up, everything Zach comes up. So it's, and I know that's why a lot of my rejections happen. It's not that I'm underqualified. It's that you've Googled my name and you can see who my spouse is.
But at least you do have your family's work. So can't they come in and try to help in terms of childcare maybe or something where
people help when they can. It's hard. Other people have jobs but they help me and they can, and eventually hopefully by next year he's home.
Well, I hope
people can help, Don. I'm gonna, because I know both of these folks. For Greg, you can go to GiveSendGo and find help Greg, GiveSendGo/.com/help Greg. And for Amanda and Zach, I believe it's free Zach, isn't it?
DefendZach.com.
DefendZach.com, and you can help these folks out. We try to do what we can, but we have 300 million people out here. Hey, come on, folks, pitch in and help these folks out. This is tyranny at your front door. If you're not brave enough to go to the corner and fight it with your hands, the least you could do is throw a few dollars onto the pile for those who are willing to sacrifice for it.
Absolutely, and we need. Looks like we lost Greg again, but maybe they rounded him up or something. I feel that guy's such a bad situation. He's in what they call a halfway house. I guess he's kind of halfway in some kind of prison, and so
it's restricted. But you have more freer access. You can come and go. However, you haven't heard the worst of it. He was assaulted, power punched out in the yard, broke out his front teeth. He's been mistreated in prison. I mean, these are real horror stories. Again, you go to lettersfromprison.us. We have 2 books of letters from these people. If you really want to hear the real truth, we could not possibly give it to you. Amanda and I could sit here for hours telling you these stories, and we still wouldn't have told you everything. But you can see the truth in these books. Go to lettersfromprison.us. You can read a couple of them for free there. You can also follow us at j6patriotnews.com. We post new letters there every day from prisoners all across this country. Do not be silent.
But American Gulag Chronicles is another book, right? That's a separate book?
Yeah, those are 2 books. Actually, it's a series of books. There's Letters from Prison, which covered that first year in the Gulag. And the new one is called Art of Confinement, where now these people are across the United States, and they're actually trying to teach you how to survive what they're going through, because you're next.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like
this is only the beginning. Like they're seeing what they can get away with, and how much, and it doesn't end with us. It's just going to get worse.
Right. Yeah, and that's the left used to love the old adage. I think it was from right around the World War II era. First they came to the Jews, or first they came whatever. But everybody understands that. And I said nothing because I wasn't Jewish or I wasn't a communist, whatever. But that's where we are now. First they came for the insurrectionists. First they came for the white supremacists. First that kind of thing where you have to understand that you can't have law that is, no one can respect a law that is ideologically biased, and our law is. I mean, you have just look at the Trump and hush money to Stormy Daniels. And by the way, there's a letter out there from Stormy Daniels at the very beginning in which she denied having an affair and said Trump treated her wonderfully. He was gracious. So I don't know how that's not exculpatory, but he supposedly paid her $130,000. Bill Clinton paid Paula Jones $850,000. No one's ever suggested he be prosecuted. I mean, that's where we are now, where the exact same crimes are being committed, and we saw that certainly in during the Black Lives Matter. Antifa, what did the guy took over 2 blocks in Seattle or something for weeks, armed with an Uzi. I don't think he was ever prosecuted, or anybody ever was. I mean, that's a little more serious than what happened on January 6th. So what? It's hard. I don't know what you're obviously, Amanda. If you're married to Zach, your politics were probably already trending a certain way. But how is it? Were you political before you met him, or is that how you met him, or what? Were you already kind of in this world?
No, I was young when I met him. So I met him when I was 18. I really didn't have any knowledge or care about politics. We didn't really speak about politics a lot until later. I mean, obviously, like after so many years of dating, you eventually kind of talk about that. And I realized I changed, right, and which is normal. I came from a very right wing family, and I was silently political. Like I didn't attend rallies. I didn't talk about politics online. I had my opinion. I went to vote, and I knew what that was. And I mean, now I've obviously become more open with my opinion on politics. So it's kind of just out there. People know about it, and I do feel like I have to speak out a little bit more now.
What did your family think of? I don't know how much older Zach is than you, but it seems like he's pretty much older. What did they think of you getting involved with somebody that much older who was a Proud Boy? I mean, was there any kind of problem there in your family?
Oh well, he he didn't become a Proud Boy till after we were married. We've been together since 2011. He's just a couple of years older. I think he's oh my goodness, 6 years older than me. So that's not.
I thought he was much older. Okay, I didn't know. Okay.
No.
Okay, well that's the.
And by the way, the Proud Boy.
Like, they knew he was never quiet about being a Proud Boy. They knew what he was when he joined. I mean, we told them about it. It didn't become an issue till he was arrested, and they're like, "They're these horrible people." And then people were like, "Oh, well, you were fine with it?" And I was, never did anything wrong. It was just a drinking club. Like I remember he joined and he was so excited because he's like, "Oh, it's just guys who I can talk about Trump with and we can drink beers." And they would go out on a boat and drink all day and just talk about Trump. And he met some great people, and I got to become friends with their wives and their girlfriends. And I'm still very close to so many of those people. And what the left would have you believe that these are horrible people because they were proud.
They don't look at them as human beings. Yeah, they don't look at them as human beings. And, that's going out and drinking with your buddies, and I mean that's something pretty much millions of non-Proud Boys do as well. But so it's horrible the way they demonize people, and it's just. Did you know Joe Biggs? Did you get to know Joe Biggs?
I never got to meet him. I actually never even heard his name until later. I guess Zach, because they were all over the country. Right. Oh, Joe was in Florida, and Ethan was in Washington, and Enrique was the only one I was familiar with the name of.
And when Enrico got 22 years, I think he wasn't even in Washington, D.C. that day. So it's just pretty amazing. Not even at the scene of the crime. And what is it? What is that, Tim? How did they manage to do that? How did they possibly, just because he was the leader of the Proud Boys and they tried to make it seem like the Proud Boys planned this or something? How do you sentence somebody to 22 years when he literally wasn't even in the city at the time?
It's slander and misrepresentation. You can see I did a three interview series with Proud Boys at J6 Patriot News. Go to our special interviews and look for the Proud Boy interviews on Rumble. You're going to figure out who these guys really are. They're just a bunch of really fun guys who like to drink and party together and talk about guy things without the gals around, and that is it. They went to so many Trump rallies and saw so much Antifa and BLM violence that many of them, who were former military, took up the roles of protectors for both crowd control as well as speakers, and that's where the militant, view of who the Proud Boys are is that they don't take any crap. You F around, you're going to find out what happens to you when you mess around with good American citizens who aren't doing anything but exercising their rights, and that's really all the Proud Boys ever did. They've been completely maligned and misrepresented. Yes. I have personally met a dozen or so of them, and I'd sit down to dinner with any one of them anywhere, anytime.
Right, you don't feel scared around them. They're not like Hell's Angels or something.
They're super people. They're parents. Some of them are officers. Many of them are veterans. They're super parents. Many of them are very devout Christians. Some of them are involved in local politics. I mean, Many of the Proud Boys down in Miami were actually part of the Republican Party committees, and yet that's why they've been singled out. They refuse to take the knee, and they have a different view of this administration. And they were pretty handy to blame everything on, and then try and associate them with Trump. And they've been the scapegoats.
Yeah, they've kind of become the face of it, the Proud Boys things. So do you hear from Zach, Ray? Do you get to visit him, or how often do you have contact with him?
He calls every day. We email back and forth all the time. We'll even send each other letters. I am trying to get a visit set up. So he's about 5.5, 6 hours away from us, and it's not an easy trip, place to get to. It would be a weekend visit to him. So I'm hoping in June for his birthday and Father's Day we can have a visit.
Well, it's really tragic what's going on, and I don't know. I guess we lost Greg. I wonder if they came and rounded him up or something. Maybe he can't be anymore. So, I mean, that could be, but it's and you obviously really feel you have a roof over your head, but there's so many people that that are obviously don't have a roof over their head in today's America, and it can't. Because that's what people need to think about is what is the impact that this has on the collateral damage as you described it, Tim. And you can see. I mean, your daughter. Thank goodness, she's very young, right? Is she 2 or something? You said 2 or 3.
She's 2.5. She'll be 3 in June.
So she's not. But I mean, hopefully things will be better by then. But do you worry, like when she gets old enough to have friends that kids that will start teasing her about your daddy's a January 6th or something?
I do worry, but I really don't want to put her in the school system. My goal is to homeschool. I don't trust. It's not even so much the students. I don't trust for her to be able to sit into a classroom and have a teacher that might not show bias that could be mean to her. I mean, I went to school and I had teachers that were mean to me, and I was just nobody. But she's the little girl who, if you know who her dad is, and I don't trust. I don't trust the school system in Philadelphia at all. And
yeah, I would. My kids are grown, but if they were young today, we'd have to figure out a way to homeschool. I couldn't possibly send them into that kind of
I don't even think they teach anything of relevance anymore. It's just indoctrination.
Yes, absolutely. And you could easily. I can't imagine. The fear that I would be fearing as a parent is that, my little kid is going to come home one day, and no matter how little they are, and just suddenly decide that they're no longer a boy, they're a girl or whatever. These are my pronouns now. It's like, what, but that's a reality.
It is. It's not right, especially then they start so young. I mean, I'm active on TikTok. I love watching TikToks, and I see people stitching these teachers that enjoy talking about how they're teaching that stuff to preschoolers, kindergarteners. That's not appropriate. They're not even minding that that's not your children. It's not in the place for school, but the age. Like, why would a 5 or 6-year-old come home even knowing about that? Because that's not anything I will ever talk to my daughter about.
Of course not. That's ridiculous.
That's all grooming. That's all grooming.
It's an older conversation when she has questions about someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many terrifying things that are going on, and you mentioned TikTok, and that was a part, I think, of that awful bill to Ukraine and Israel the other day. I think they snuck in there a banning of TikTok, which a lot of the right wing supports that because of the crazy TikTok teachers that people seen. And
what is so crazy is I get so much right wing news from TikTok. And there are things I learn on there, and if I Google it, it's buried. It's not shown on the news. Because I think it's a decent platform that a lot of right wingers have begun using, especially as they're getting banned on so many other platforms.
Yeah, and it's again, you don't. The idea is you're either for censorship or you're not, and that's the problem again with the right. That they're very inconsistent. Just like they're a lot of them are for. A lot of them are in favor of the crackdowns on the pro-Palestinian protesters on college campuses. The exact same people that were canceled conservative speakers, the exact same thing. You either believe in free speech or you don't. And that's the problem that I run into over and over again is that people aren't consistent. It's something like this. You got to take Trump out of the equation. Take all this out of the equation. What happened? What you were there for a protest. In many cases, a lot of these people that have been prosecuted in Enrico Tarrio's case, he wasn't even in the city, but plenty of people weren't in. Owen Schroyer of InventoWars was served 30-some days. He was recorded on tape telling people, hey, this is a setup. Don't go inside. I mean,
we had a friend whose house was raided. He was at work on January 6th, but his house was raided, and he was never arrested. He was never charged, but they had warned him that he was likely going to be arrested, and he was at work that day. He wasn't there, but because he was in a Proud Boy chat.
Yes, it's. I mean, they're reaching like that. They're desperately trying to find any connection way beyond anything that supposedly happened in the communist witch hunt in the 1950s. This goes way beyond that. I mean, the New York Post has a headline calling Marjorie Taylor Greene Moscow Marjorie. It's like, I mean, this is beyond anything that happened in the 1950s. But the left, like I said, that's where I came from. The left has completely lost its collective mind, and they don't believe in free speech. And this is the central problem why you can't get justice for January 6th, because they do not believe in the First Amendment. They don't believe in it. They don't think you have a right to peacefully assemble and protest at all. They don't believe it unless they support, like Black Lives Matter. If it's a cause they support, then of course you have a right to burn down buildings. But they don't support this. They don't believe in free speech. They would say, well, Proud Boys hate speech, it's some Orwellian term like that. I mean, I'm amazed that you have family support, Amanda. That's great, because and Tim probably knows lots of examples of those that don't. I remember just researching this. There was at least one woman whose daughter identified her on Facebook or something and said, hey, isn't that you, Mom? And is being there, turned her in. And I think you mentioned there was a son who turned his dad in and testified against him at trial.
That's correct. Guy Reffitt.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some tragic stories here. And again, it's all about many of these people were indoctrinated. The children were indoctrinated in the same system that Amanda is wisely not going to put her child into. It's just amazing. Both of my parents were teachers. I guarantee you they are rolling in their graves seeing what's happened to the education system.
They're already teaching about January 6th in public schools, in Philadelphia, and charter schools. And you know how they're painting it. It's a terrorist attack, the worst terrorist attack ever to happen in American history. Because according to judges, it is worse than Pearl Harbor, worse than 9/11.
And it's why the books had to be released, really. It was why the American Gulag Chronicles had to be written, because you cannot let this lie of history exist without challenge. These books are now in the Library of Congress. Say what you will, these men's words and these women's words are enshrined as part of history, and you will not be able to deny them. You can slander them. You can say they don't know what they're talking about. Gee, hundreds and hundreds of people saying the same thing, I guess, might be a little credulity there. But at the same time, these interviews that we've done, the letters that have been written and published, the documentaries at stophate.com that have been produced with these videos to show you for yourself what happened, and use your brain, for God's sakes. Don't just sit there and be a one-click purveyor of news. You watch something really stupid and you don't take the time to validate it or to look for another viewpoint. You just swallow that whole. That's what's wrong with this country right now. We've gotten lazy. We've gotten lazy about our constitutional rights. We've gotten lazy about our duties as Americans for liberty. We've gotten lazy about the protection of other Americans, thinking that it didn't happen to us, so why should I involve myself?
Exactly. That's it.
You're going to learn real quick.
Yeah. As long as it doesn't happen to me, that's okay. They wouldn't do, and that's the idea that all tyrants feast on, is that, that you're, as long as it didn't happen to me, okay, I'll be quiet up here. They won't notice me, and I'll be safe. You shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have done that. Again, it just contradicts the entire concept of a First Amendment, of a free society.
You got to understand who these people are as human beings. You'll only understand that by delving into their lives, listening to their stories, hearing their letters, listening to them. And then you'll understand, you'll be humanized. The demonization will be ripped away, and you can make decisions. When you see a beautiful family like Amanda and Zach and their lovely daughter, and you see that being destroyed by this government wantonly just to make a political point, why aren't you screaming? Why haven't you called 202-224-3121, ask for your congressmen and your senators, and give them what for not doing their jobs? Silence is complicit.
Tim, give us a few examples, if you would, of just some really. I mean, all these stories are touching, obviously, and tragic, but maybe a couple ones that are really maybe people don't know about that are just extraordinary in some way.
Cal Fitzsimons is. I mean, the one that brought me into this fight is Jeffrey McKillop, who is a war hero. Both a U.S. Army Ranger who served his term and went out, and then after 9/11 re-enlisted, became a Green Beret, served out a full term in places you and I never want to see. One of the heroes of Fallujah, 3 Bronze Stars for bravery in battle. He sits in a Fort Worth prison right now, over 3 years and 2 months, without trial. Without trial. 3 years, 2 months. He's a family man. 2 beautiful children, one of them who's actually maybe going to become a SEAL, and a lovely daughter who's very artistic. He's lost his home. He's lost his wife. He's lost his family. He's lost everything. When he comes out, this amazing war hero will be homeless and penniless if he comes out.
And obviously his benefits, if he does come out, his benefits have been stripped, I imagine.
All gone. This is the heart of America, and you want to rip it out of the body. And he's not alone. I mean, I could, so many. Oh my gosh, the Reppets, Nicole, and let's just think about Kyle Fitzsimons and his young daughter, similar to Amanda's tale, where the baby never got to see her daddy. He was in jail until she was almost 1.5 to 2 years old. And those folks, I can't do it. I just go to j6patriotnews.com, go to the blog, start reading letters from prison. Just read these letters and learn for yourself. Buy the books. The money from the books goes to help people like Greg and Amanda and all of the J6ers and these families. All of that money goes to a nonprofit, and it's doled out to these people as they need it to keep their lights on, keep their insurance on their cars, keep their houses over their heads, and stop this government from turning them into victims too. And if you sit there and don't do anything, you have not learned the lessons of Matthew 25, verses 35 through 40. As you do for each of these, my brothers and sisters, you do for me.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm just astounded at the Social Security thing. I mean, how many people or J6ers were old enough to be collecting Social Security? And is that how is that how it generally works? Do they stop giving you Social Security if you're convicted of a felony or something? How does that work?
They don't. That's not normal, is it?
Okay, that's what
if you're incarcerated, it would stop during your incarceration. But if you have family, especially with disability, your family would receive it during the time of incarceration. But they had Zach's taken away before he was even convicted, so it completely.
Before he's even convicted, jeez, that's nice.
They came in 1 month. It was September of 2022. They took away his VA disability. They took away his SSDI, and they closed his bank accounts, closed his credit cards. It was one swoop with the government. They took it all away.
Erased is the word.
Yeah,
friends.
And when I called the VA, actually, to try to work with them to figure out what to do, they couldn't even find Zach in their database. They were like, "Is he a VA employee?" And I was like, "He's a veteran," and they had nothing on him. They said he was locked. He was a locked file.
It's just mind-boggling. The more I learn about this, but I'm interested, Tim, in terms of the people that are old enough to be getting Social Security already, and they just how do they do this? They just stop. And what precedent do they cite? I mean, I don't know how they could do that,
but they do. We don't know how you could sit in judgment of people without a fair trial, but they do. We don't know how you could hold people and make them go to court where everybody on the jury, including the judge and the prosecutors, are victims, but they do. We don't know how you could use enhanced terrorism on people who did nothing that has anything to do with terrorism, but they do. They do this because we may have laws, but we have lost the rule of law. We have lost the rule of law. Do your representatives really represent you anymore? And if they don't, do you sit there silently and let them ignore you? Are they not your employees and you're the employer? And yet you'll sit here silently and watch this happen. 202-224-3121. Just give them your damn zip code and they'll do the rest.
It's,
Oh,
yeah, I mean,
sorry. I'm going to actually have to get off now. My daughter is wanting me.
okay, Amanda, do you have anything, any link you want to give out or anything else you want to say before you go?
Just if anyone wants updates on Zach, and we update regularly, defendzach.com has all current updates on everything with him, address to write him a letter. His Twitter has been banned, so we keep to truth and we keep to the defendzach.com.
Well, go tend to your daughter, Amanda. Thank you. God bless you. And we're all hoping for the best for your husband.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And it was nice talking to you again, Tim.
Thanks for being here, Amanda. It's Amanda Reel. So Tim,
thank you.
Again, we, okay, she's gone now. And I don't know what I texted Greg, but I don't know.
I think he's probably gone for the rest of this. I think that's it. Again, you can see all of these people, their interviews and everything are out at j6patriotnews.com. You can learn more about them. You can learn more about how to help them. These are touching stories. They're really, they're just heartfelt, testimony. And if you don't listen to it, then somebody put a letter in a bottle and threw it into the ocean for no reason whatsoever. These bottles have washed up on your shore. You need to open those letters and read them because they're addressed to you. And I don't think I can say much more except don't do nothing.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm certainly doing what I can with the platform I have, but I don't get the sense, I don't see a whole lot of interviews with January 6 people or anything about this on the bigger alt media programs. I mean, are they, so do they just not have it? I mean, Tucker Carlson early on had a few when he was back on Fox.
Well, he has them now on his new platform, and you're just not looking. If you can't find the interviews, you're just not looking in the right place.
Well, I'm talking about like the bigger. I'm talking about. I don't know how many times Alex Jones has had people on, or Tim Pool, or.
Well, you won't see him on CNN, and you won't see him on Fox, and you're probably never going to see him on ABC or CBS.
Right.
So you'll just have to learn how to get your news from more than one source. Don't be the one-click believer.
Right.
How about stop being lazy and let's just get down to you got to discover the truth when people lie to you. You can't just take it at face value anymore. And folks, that's all they're doing is lying to you.
We're trying to get it out there as best as we can. I mean, there's, we're this is just shocking in it, but I don't think all our hopes, I guess, are on the Supreme Court. What are your feelings? Do you have a good feeling? Do you think whatever the Supreme Court decides, what will it result? Will it result in them, a bunch of them being released from prison?
I would think that you're going to have to, in the first case, when the Supreme Court makes a decision like that, what it means is that the individuals who have been unjustly sentenced or unjustly sentenced can go back to the court and file a motion to have those things reversed. It's not an automatic thing. Lieutenant Colonel Brock, who got his enhancements removed in his appeal, he set the stage. Now everybody who had those enhancements can now go and file a motion with their court to have their sentences reviewed, right, in light of that new citation. And the same thing is going to happen with the Supreme Court. If you dismiss 1512C, everybody who's got that on their charge will be able to come back to the courts and basically petition to have it removed, petition to have it reversed. But again, I point out that people like Greg, so many people have already served time for this, and you cannot give that time back to them.
Right.
You can't undo the damage you've done to their lives. You can't undo the civic death of losing your voting rights, your First Amendment rights, your 4A rights, your 2A rights. You basically have no rights as a felon. You can't undo that. And that's the whole purpose of trying to do this to Donald Trump. They will not stop. They'll be more than happy, the next folks to come after somebody like Don or myself, who will not be quiet. And then when they're done with us, they'll come for you.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that's why I mention this all the time, and again, it's just there, but for the grace of God, and people just don't they don't understand when every time these precedents happen in the Trump trials, Alex Jones trials. I mean, something like the Sandy Hook case is like, okay, you can. I've been studying the JFK assassination my entire life. What's to stop the Kennedy family from claiming that people like me have been harassing them? What's to stop the 9/11, all the families to say, oh, you guys are harassing us? What do we're talking about all these crazy things and holograms and,
you want to really be scared? Everybody go to your computer and Google FirstNet. See what the government's really up to. Then FirstNet allows them basically to, oh, that looks like misinformation. Take it right off the internet. Nobody can look at it. Nobody can see it, completely blocked. Coming to a computer near you.
Well, that's what I'm scared that is going to be, again, because I think Trump is being used symbolically for all these things to set precedents for all of us. But I would not be surprised if they didn't put him on, because they put him on trial for everything else that's ridiculous, for some kind of thing involving disinformation and misinformation or conspiracy theories, something like that, where they could try all of us, where they would say, hey, this is irresponsible. He's promoting disinformation and misinformation. And again, once he gets convicted, which he will, because these are J6 courts, these kangaroo courts, there's no hope of him not being convicted, then that sets a precedent for us. For all of us, they can take really genuine dissenters that are saying things that are exposing whistleblowers, people like that are exposing real corruption, and they can say, well, look, you can't. We said in the Trump case, former president of the United States, you don't have the right to free speech does not protect your right to promote disinformation or misinformation. It's like what is that even? But the fact that they're getting it. Remember Biden. Trotted out there just a completely Orwellian thing about the minister of disinformation or something, that woman that sang like Mary Poppins. I mean, that was something they were trying to do. So I can't feel optimistic. What are your thoughts about the 2024 election? Regardless of what happens, is there any way there's going to be a result where millions of people aren't going to be protesting?
No.
I mean, because who
for a real complex answer? Because the answer is no.
No, because
violence. There's going to be civil disturbances across the nation. I don't think it really matters which side wins. However, I truly believe that if a certain party wins, then the destruction of this country will have been completed, done, finished. Yeah. We can put the tab right on top, put the cherry on there, and serve it up.
Have you had any kind of contact? What are your thoughts on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? Because I don't know what role he's going to play here. I think he kind of gets dismissed, but he's had some good numbers in the polls. And I don't know has he talked about January 6th? My sense is that he might be sympathetic, but I don't know. Do you know anything about that?
No, but I have no room for rhinos, so he just doesn't even fall into my equation. Okay. The truth of the matter is, if you are not really about the core beliefs of this country, if you're not about pro-life, if you're not about pro-freedom, if you're not about First Amendment, if you're not about the Second Amendment, if you're not about constitutionality, then I have nothing for you. I have no interest in you. I have no votes for you. In fact, I basically have a little bit of enmity for you, depending on how firmly you are against those things. And I believe Mr. Kennedy is against too many things for me to ever put any faith in him.
Well, what do you think what happens if, again, because we don't know how everything with Trump is going to play out. He's being prosecuted for something every week now. There's so many of these things that it's just become really a joke at this point. But if somehow, can they possibly come up with some way, say, hey, he's convicted of something, so he can't run for president? Can they do anything? Can they put him in prison and say he can't run? How can they stop him from being on the ballot?
I don't think they can, but I don't think they won't try. I believe they're very desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. I would not put it apart, them even trying to assassinate him. And let's face it, they won't talk openly about it, but there have been events around him that could be considered attempted lethality.
Well, if they did assassinate him, what? I mean, what?
You'd have a civil war in this country like you've never seen before. The 2A would finally raise its head, and you wouldn't have to worry about your 1A problems anymore. It would be the 2A problems you need to worry about. I think America is at crisis, and I think our attention is firmly diverted from the real crises around us, the border, the imminent wars, the reaching of nuclear capability in Iran, the problems with Hamas, the problem with localized terrorism, the destruction of the European Union through all of this massive immigration that has disrupted their culture, their religions, their belief structures, their parliaments. That's coming to a city near you, folks. Just sit back and watch your television. Don't bother getting out from behind the keyboard. Don't pick up that telephone and call your congressman, for God's sakes, or write him a letter or show up at his office to talk about it. Oh, for gosh sakes, do not get involved. Just sit back and watch this show and enjoy your popcorn. And then somebody will come for you.
Absolutely. Well, I can't argue with you, and we'll let this see what goes. I'll let you go a little bit early because I'll just chat with the chat here for 10 minutes or so. But Tim Rivers, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Give out the American Gulag Chronicles. Give out any links you want or promote anything you want to promote.
Go to J6 Patriot News. That is the core. Everything you want to ever know about what's happening in the January 6th community. Read the letters from these individuals. Find out what's happening to them. Find out the core. J, the letter J, the number 6, patriotnews.com. Everything can be found from there. You can find all these other great organizations I talked about down at the bottom of the front page. You can read the letters for free. They're coming in every day. You can purchase these books and get involved, become part of the Gulag Army to keep these men and women alive until we can bring them home. You can do something. So don't do nothing.
Absolutely. Well, Tim Rivers, you're doing great work, brother. I really appreciate what you're doing, and it's you're remembering these people, and it's a travesty. I think it's the greatest injustice in the history of this country. That's saying something because we've had a lot of injustices. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll have to have you back on.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care, brother. Take care. Bye. Okay, folks, we have a little bit of time left. I want to go over some of the things in the chat. Let's go back here because a lot of it wasn't necessarily. Deborah Wheeler, hello to you. And it's a hard time for me to give a hug to Riley, as I've talked about. She's not easy to hug. Don Lambert, good to see you. Freethinker 59, Karen Carpenter. A lot of the people we see here, I really appreciate the regular people. John Bassaglone. And a lot of you guys were making a Brothers Grimm show. We're making comments, and I'm not going to challenge my guests and stuff like this. And when I have January 6 people on, I get the sense in the chat room that so many of you, you almost want to blame them. Yeah, sure, they maybe they should have known better. But I don't. Again, it doesn't matter because what happened to them afterwards? It's a reaction to the system. Should they have been smarter? Sure. But, we always sound like Captain Hindsight, if you remember that character on South Park. Brothers Grimm Show, Free Joe Biggs. Yeah, Harlan Stonewall, good to see you. Houston, Eddie Word. Rabo's Passion. We got here. Chris Buchan, there you go. Hey, Chris, do you really think I'm going to put that comment up on the screen? Come on. I mean, that's this woman was married to a Proud Boy, and they didn't deserve what happened to them. Whatever. Quinn Pua. I think was that Quinn Pua that says one of the guys said he heard. Quinn Pua. Yeah, I just wanted to say you intrigued me with your knowledge of JFK. Respect. Thank you, Quinn Pua. I appreciate that. Well, it's been my wheelhouse issue since probably 1975. So when I was a teenager, I was a volunteer for Mark Lane's Citizens Committee of Inquiry. I've talked about going to the National Archives and having a private viewing of the Zapruder film, being treated like royalty because I was with his group, and getting to hold the ridiculous Mannlicher Carcano rifle that was not used in the assassination. It was very, attributed to Oswald illegally because it could not be connected to him. the magic bullet, holding the magic bullet, seeing JFK's clothing brought out to me and everything. So it was a very heady experience. Good to see my friend Jacob. Jacob, we're going to get you on the show one of these days. You got a lot of interesting things to say. Geese Busters. What else do we have here? I must say I'm getting a bit of a complex. I don't have as many people in here as we get during America Unplugged. So I'd like to see more participation, but I'm very proud. I saw Chris Graves in here, my buddy. I'm very appreciative of the regulars, people I see here all the time. It's wonderful. You regularly turn into my show. I can't tell you how much that means to me. Okay, I think I got just about every. John Lawler, who praised my shirt again. I appreciate that. I can always count on Little John to like my shirts. What else do we have here? Let's see if there are any other questions I saw. Because again, some of these ones I'm not going to. Oh, now what? Okay. And now what brings up a point about the masses not pushing back. But I mean, again, especially after what happened January 6th, it's hard to blame them. I mean, look what's happened to these people. You saw, Amy talking about, things that I didn't even know they were doing, just canceling their insurance. And they're not even making up an excuse. No, we canceled your insurance because your husband was a J6er. Really? And the fact, that terrifies me as somebody who's receiving Social Security now, because I know the Republicans want to get rid of it. And again, it's one reason why they're not the answer, folks. This is their big ticket issue. Let's get rid of Social Security and Medicare. What? You want to create a revolution? You want to throw millions of elderly people out on the street, which is what would happen if you did that? It's just a brilliant political issue, and that's the perfect. Catherine Z, good to see you. That's just a perfect issue for these people. Because I guess why they call them the stupid party. Thank you, Free Thinker. He says, thank you for the show. Jacob says, good article yesterday. I'll see you later. Thank you. My Substack. Yeah, if you're not subscribing to me on Substack, please do so. Donald Jeffries at Substack.com. I protest. It's the only place I'm not being shadow banned. It's Twitter is hit or miss with me now. X, or whatever, the platform formerly known as Twitter. Sometimes I feel like, maybe they're letting things through because I'll get a pretty good response, but then nothing. And so I don't know. I think they're still shadow banning me there. I've had so many people tell me I followed you and the system unfollowed me, and I can't seem to grow much there. So if you're X, please try to follow me at Don Jeffries, because it's really embarrassing. I should have a lot more followers than I do, but I don't know. I don't know how you do it when the system's unfollowing you. Facebook, same kind of thing. They let me get up to the maximum amount of friends before they started shadow banning me, but most of the time, they will just block access to most of the people if it's something significant, unless I'm talking about something I had for dinner or happy birthday or something. Then they'll let it through, and I get hundreds of reactions. But that's the shadow ban. So Substack is the only place where you're going to find. And I'll be talking about. We just did the cover, and I was going over the manuscript again today with the editors for American Memory Hole, how the court historians promote disinformation. That's due out in August. That'll be a real deep dive into really how the court historians, and what Amy described is what you see is they're already paving the way for something like January 6th. So, just like they paved the way for JFK, where they instantly taught school children Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK. I'm sure in 9/11 they did the same thing. Osama bin Laden, this crazed terrorist from the Bat Cave or something in Afghanistan did 9/11 with box cutters and plastic knives. So they make up these narratives and they instantly peddle them through the mainstream media and the school system. But they also then later it gets institutionalized, and the court historians come into play, and people like me that love history and write about history. We have to try to counter that. It's not easy. Houston said he would love to hear me and Jerome Corsi talk about JFK. Jerome Corsi, I have had him. I had him on my show a long time ago, early on when I protested over on TFR. You can probably find the archive of that somewhere, maybe. But he said, and again, he's somebody that lots of people hate when I talked about him, but because he had some really good things to say about my about hidden history, and he wrote a blurb for Survival of the Richest, which I doubt he approved of the message in that book, but he was. Free Thinker said 59 says Donna, I'm a woman. I did not know, but I don't know what I assume by names like that. You're right; it could be an. I'm glad you're a woman and you don't identify as anything one of the other 57 genders, but and it's wonderful to have you here. But Jerome Corsi, he was very supportive of my work, but then I think again he was one of those guys like. Roger Stone, in a way, Roger Stone wasn't quite as lucky because he had a pre-dawn raid of his home, but he ended up being pardoned by Trump. But Corsi was in danger of having a Roger Stone thing done to him, and I think he knew that. He was telling me they were going over his email from years ago and everything. I think so. We talked about on the show, but I tried to get him back on the show a while back, and he just kind of told me he's not doing interviews anymore. So I guess I don't blame him. Rainbow's Passion said of course he's a Roger Stone or T. Pachenik. Well, T. Pachenik again, I put in a different category. I used to like him a lot, but when he was on Alex Jones, but his ridiculous, absurd watermark disinfo when he was trying to peddle some nonsense, which would have been great, but it was pretty obvious right away that it was BS, and that was really at the heart of why David Knight left Alex Jones' show. And I think he's still bitter about that, and justifiably so, because I think he tried to tell Alex, this is ridiculous, this watermark thing. I mean, Homeland Security was telling people right away the election was secured. He's talking about people from Homeland Security who was doing this, the mysterious white hats or whatever. But anyhow, so yeah, I would love to talk to him again. But he said nothing but nice things about me. Same thing with Roger Stone. Roger Stone wrote a report. So when people talk about him, look, I don't know. All I can do is just they said good things about my work. Okay, and I don't know. I don't agree with being loyal to Trump at this point. Just like the J6ers, am I going to criticize people that are going through this stuff that? Just because they still like this guy. I mean, it says something for Trump that he can possibly get all these people to remain loyal to him, that he doesn't remotely deserve their loyalty. But it amazes me that more people, and you can see Greg was kind of saying, well, he could have done more, but it's amazing, really, that what was I thinking? SGT report, Secret Scrolls were spin-offs. Yeah. SGT report. I was on many times, Rainbow's Passion, and at one time they had close to 1 million subscribers, and they went in the second wave after they got rid of Alex Jones, and people celebrated again. You don't celebrate censorship ever. Chris says, what does Chris say? He identifies a billionaire, but see, yeah, and that's what I'm waiting for. I am pushing that, please. And it's got to be some loud black people. Please, loud black poor people, claim you identify as a billionaire. Please identify. Please. I want to see it. I want to see it come to a head. Please do it, because it's no crazier than identifying as a woman or a cat, as some people do. They're the furries. It's ridiculous. Chris says the same thing about Trump or the stupidity and ability of the average American. Well, again, but I think people are desperate. They want so much to have, an alternative. And Trump's the only one that's dangled out there to them. He's their Goldstein. Peter, there's Peter Seakosh. And there you go. Peter Seakosh, along with Chris Gray's Hall of Fame researchers, man, they've been so helpful to me. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, guys, very much so. But at any rate, so we're just about out of time. Again, please, if you don't subscribe to me at Substack, Donald Jeffries at Substack.com. It's called I Protest, just like this show. We would try to support me that way. And if you can support Masking the Truth, get it in your libraries, try to do something. We're fighting all we can against that. Excuse me, that incredible shadow band. It's the most shadow band book in the world. And American Memory Hole that comes out in August. I don't think it's going to be a shadow band. But please try to support that too. I'll be saying much more about that. Again, thanks to everybody. Hope I didn't miss anybody in the chat room. Thanks to, and I didn't get a chance to look at Rockfin. So anybody over there, please. Thanks everybody for listening to I Protest. And we'll talk to you next week, same time. Take care.